Hyun Taemin stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and felt very small. The room was massive, built for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above him. Around him, seated on floating platforms, were the representatives of 17 different alien species. Each one looked down at him with eyes that reflected nothing but cold judgment. Taemin wore his best diplomatic uniform. The dark blue fabric had Earth's symbol stitched on the shoulder, a small planet that now seemed impossibly far away. He had practiced his speech for months. He knew every word, every pause, every gesture that might help convince these beings to accept humanity into their community. But something had gone wrong. "The evidence is clear," Counselor Vreth announced. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. Vreth was a Valorian, tall and covered in scales that shimmered like gold. His people had ruled dozens of worlds for thousands of years. "The human has been caught transmitting military secrets to his world. He is a spy." Taemin felt his heart hammering in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had learned that lesson early in his diplomatic training. Never show fear. Never show anger. Always remain in control. "Counselor Vreth, I respectfully deny these accusations," Taemin said. His voice carried through the chamber, steady and clear. "I have transmitted only the information agreed upon in our preliminary meetings. I am a diplomat, not a spy. My mission is peace." "Peace," Vreth repeated, and the words sounded like poison in his mouth. "Your species barely learned to travel between stars 5 years ago. Now your ships explore systems that took us centuries to reach. Your technology advances at a rate that defies natural progression. And you expect us to believe you come in peace." Taemin wanted to argue that progress was not a crime. He wanted to say that humanity's rapid advancement came from desperation, from the need to find new resources and new hope after nearly destroying their own world. He wanted to explain that humans learned from their mistakes, that they genuinely wanted to be part of something larger than themselves, but he knew it would not matter. He had seen this trap before in smaller negotiations. The Council had already decided. This trial was just for show. In orbit above the Council station, Captain Jiwoo Hana watched the proceedings through her ship's communication screen. Her hands gripped the armrests of her command chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The bridge crew around her sat in tense silence. Everyone knew what was happening, but no one could stop it. "Captain, we could extract him," Lieutenant Han Eunji said quietly from the tactical station. "Our weapons are ready. We could blast through their defenses and start a war that would destroy Earth," Hana finished. Her voice was bitter. "They have 17 species, thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We have one solar system and barely 50 vessels that can fight in deep space. If we attack now, they will crush us." Yoonji looked away. She knew the captain was right, but that made it no easier to accept. Back in the chamber, another counselor spoke. This one was Nexari, a being that looked like it was made of flowing silver liquid held together by some invisible force. "The humans' communication logs have been analyzed. The transmissions contain detailed scans of our defensive systems. This is espionage." "Those scans were part of the cultural exchange program," Taemin argued. "Your own protocols required us to submit sensor data to prove our ships were not carrying weapons. We followed your rules exactly." "Rules that you knew would expose our defenses," Vreth said. "A clever trap, human, but not clever enough." Taemin realized then that the evidence had been manufactured. Someone had altered his transmission logs, adding data that he had never sent. It was a perfect setup. Earth was too new to have the technology to prove the tampering. The Council's word would be accepted over his. "I request that Earth be allowed to send legal representation," Taemin said. "Under the Galactic Treaty of Rights, any accused being is entitled to—" That treaty applies to member species, a third counselor interrupted. This one was Kelthum, ancient and covered in what looked like living crystals. Humanity is not a member. You have no rights here except those we choose to grant. The words fell like stones into deep water. Taman felt something shift inside him. He had believed that the galaxy operated on rules, on laws that applied to everyone. He had believed that reason and evidence mattered. He had believed that if he did everything right, if he was honest and patient and respectful, humanity would find its place among the stars. He had been wrong. "Then why did you invite us here?" Taman asked. The diplomatic control in his voice was cracking. "Why send your messages of welcome? Why pretend you wanted peace?" Vreth leaned forward on his platform. "To teach you a lesson. To show your kind what happens to species that rise too fast, that reach too far. You are primitives playing with technology you barely understand. You needed to be reminded of your place." The vote came quickly. 17 counselors. 16 voted for execution. Only one, a small representative from a species that rarely spoke, voted against. It did not matter. The decision was made. Taman stood very still as they explained how he would die. Neural disintegration, they said, painless and quick. His consciousness would simply stop, like turning off a light. They would broadcast it across all council worlds as a warning to other ambitious species. Captain Hana was screaming on her bridge. She was ordering her weapons officer to target the station, demanding that someone give her options, begging her crew to find a way to save him. But there was nothing. The station's shields could withstand her ship's weapons for hours. By the time she broke through, Taman would be dead and the council's fleets would be surrounding her. In the chamber, Taman was given one last chance to speak. His hands were bound now with energy restraints that glowed blue in the dim light. Guards stood around him, making sure he could not run. Taman looked up at the counselors. He looked at each face, human and alien. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had trusted him to speak for them. He thought about his family, about the children in schools who were learning about the stars and dreaming of meeting aliens. He thought about the future that would now never come. Then he opened a communication channel to Earth. It took a few seconds for the signal to reach his homeworld, but he knew people were listening. He knew that somewhere his words would be heard. "Do not bow," Taman said. His voice was calm again, steady and clear. "Do not break. Show them what humans truly are." The light that killed him was bright enough to blind. It lasted less than a second. Ambassador Hyun Taman, Earth's first diplomat to the stars, ceased to exist. On her ship, Captain Hana closed her eyes. Around her, the bridge crew wept openly. In the darkness of space, one human vessel turned slowly and began the long journey home. Behind them, the Galactic Council returned to their business. They believed they had solved a problem. They believed they had taught humanity its place. They believed the matter was finished. They could not have been more wrong. 6 months passed. The Galactic Council heard nothing from Earth. At first, they were pleased. The silence meant their lesson had worked. The humans had retreated back to their small corner of space, properly afraid and properly controlled. The Council sent messages demanding tribute as a condition for future diplomatic contact. The messages went unanswered. Then the Council sent ships to observe Earth's solar system. The ships never returned. They simply vanished at the edge of human space, as if they had flown into a void and disappeared. More ships were sent. They vanished too. The Council began to feel the first stirrings of concern, but they convinced themselves it was technical failures, strange anomalies in human space. Nothing to worry about. They did not know that humanity had gone to war. On Earth, Admiral Kang Doyon stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of what used to be South Korea. The room was filled with screens showing data from every corner of human space. Military officers moved between stations with urgent purpose. The quiet hum of activity never stopped, not even for a moment. Doyen was 53 years old. He had fought in Earth's last major war, the resource conflict that nearly tore the planet apart 20 years ago. He had seen what humans could do to each other when pushed to desperation. Now he would show aliens what humans could do when someone they loved was murdered. "Report," Doyen said to the woman standing beside him. Dr. Yun Sua looked tired. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since Taemin's execution. Her team had been working without rest, pushing human science further in 6 months than it had advanced in the previous decade. "The quantum strike system is ready," Sua said. She pulled up a holographic display that showed complex mathematical equations. "We can now deliver weapons through quantum entanglement. Distance becomes meaningless. We can hit targets anywhere in the galaxy instantly." "And they cannot detect it?" Doyen asked. "Not with their current technology? By the time they register the attack, it has already happened. We tested it on the Council ships that entered our space. They never knew what hit them." Doyen nodded slowly. The Council's missing ships were not lost to technical failures. They were sitting in hidden locations throughout the solar system, their crews held in stasis fields, alive but prisoners. Humanity had captured them without firing a single shot that anyone could detect. "What about the ghost drive?" Doyen asked. A younger man stepped forward. Park Ji-hoon was barely 30 years old, but he was the brightest engineer Earth had produced in a generation. He had designed the stealth system that made human ships invisible to all known detection methods. "Fully operational on all strike craft," Ji-hoon said. "The Council's sensors work by detecting energy signatures and mass displacement. Our ships create a quantum field that cancels both. To their instruments, we simply do not exist." "Until we want them to see us," Doyen added. "Exactly, sir." Doyen walked to the main screen. It showed a map of known space, with Earth at the center and the Council's territory spreading out like a cancer around them. 17 species, thousands of worlds, an empire that had existed for millennia. "They think we are afraid," Doyen said quietly. "They think we are hiding. Let them think that for a little while longer. When we strike, I want them to understand that they made a terrible mistake." Across the solar system, humanity was transforming. Every factory that once built commercial ships now built warships. Every research facility that studied peaceful applications of science now studied weapons. Every person on Earth and in the colonies knew what had happened to Taemin. They had all heard his final words. They all understood what needed to be done. Commander Lee Min-ho led the first real test of Earth's new capabilities. He was in charge of the Ghost Fleet, 12 ships that could move through space without being detected. His mission was simple: gather intelligence on the Council's military capabilities, go to their worlds, scan their defenses, learn everything about them, and return without being seen. Min-ho stood on the bridge of his ship as it approached a Valorian military outpost. The outpost was massive, a station that could hold 10,000 troops and 300 warships. It had weapons powerful enough to destroy planets. Its shields could withstand attacks from entire fleets, but its sensors showed nothing unusual. Just empty space and distant stars. "Take us in," Min-ho ordered. The ship glided forward silently. They passed within meters of Valorian patrol ships. They drifted through the outpost's defense grid. They positioned themselves directly beside the main command center, and nobody knew they were there. "Begin scanning," Min-ho said. For 6 hours, Min-ho's crew recorded everything. They copied the outpost's entire computer system. They recorded the positions of every Council fleet in 12 sectors. They downloaded tactical plans, weapon specifications, political communications. They learned the locations of Council leaders, the deployment schedules of military forces, even the personal files of individual commanders. Then they left, just as silently as they came. Minho repeated this process at 15 different locations over 2 months. Each time, his ships moved through council space like ghosts. Each time, they took everything they needed and left no trace. By the time he returned to Earth, humanity knew more about the Council's military than most Council members knew themselves. They are not prepared for a real war, Minho reported to Admiral Doyun. Their technology is old. They have not fought a serious conflict in 300 years. They are comfortable, complacent. They believe their size makes them unbeatable. Good, Doyun said. Fear makes people cautious. Confidence makes them careless. While Minho gathered intelligence, Dr. Sua completed her masterpiece. She called it the displacement cannon. It used controlled wormhole technology to transport matter across any distance instantly. But instead of moving ships or cargo, it moved entire enemy installations into pocket dimensions, spaces outside normal reality where they could be stored indefinitely. We can make their bases disappear, Sua explained to the military council. Not destroyed, just gone, moved somewhere else. We can bring them back later if we choose, or we can leave them there forever. The implications were staggering. Humanity could make entire military forces vanish without killing anyone. They could remove threats without the moral burden of mass death. It was a weapon that showed overwhelming power while maintaining the ethical standards that made humans different from the Council. Admiral Doyun looked at the assembled officers and scientists. These people had worked without stopping for 6 months. They had sacrificed everything to prepare for what came next. Earth had transformed from a hopeful species reaching for the stars into something the galaxy had never seen before. A civilization that combined advanced technology with a unified purpose and an absolute refusal to forgive. Begin Operation Taman, Doyun ordered. Captain Jiwoo Hana received the orders on her ship. She had been given command of the First Strike Fleet, 30 vessels equipped with every piece of new technology Earth had developed. Her crew had trained for this moment. They knew the risks. They knew they might not come back. But every single one of them had volunteered. Every single one had watched Taman die. Every single one wanted the Council to understand what they had done. Hana looked at the star map on her screen. It showed 12 Valorian military installations across 6 star systems. These were the bases responsible for border security. They were commanded by officers who had cheered when Taman was executed. They represented everything wrong with the Council's arrogance and cruelty. Set coordinates, Hana ordered. Ghost drive to maximum stealth. We go in silent, we strike hard, and we show them that humans do not forgive murder. The fleet vanished from Earth space. The Council's sensors showed nothing. No ships launching, no energy signatures, no indication that anything had changed. That was exactly what Doyun wanted. When the attack came, it would be total surprise. The Council would wake up to find their military bases gone, their soldiers taken, and humanity standing over them with weapons they could not understand and technology they could not match. The message would be clear. You killed one human diplomat. Now you face the consequences. The war had begun, but it would not be a war of conquest or revenge. It would be something the galaxy had never experienced before. It would be a war of justice, fought by a species that refused to become monsters, even while showing monstrous power. Earth was ready. The Council was not. And in the darkness of space, human ships moved like whispers toward their targets, invisible and unstoppable. The first Valorian commander to notice something wrong was Station Chief Horvath. He was drinking his morning stimulant and reviewing routine reports when he realized that he had not received the standard check-in from Outpost 7. He tried to contact them. No response. He checked the sensor network. It showed Outpost 7 exactly where it should be, operating normally. But when he tried to connect via communication channels, there was nothing. Just silence. Horvath sent a patrol ship to investigate. It took 3 hours for the ship to reach Outpost 7's coordinates. When it arrived, the crew found nothing. No outpost, no debris, no signs of battle. Just empty space where a massive military installation had stood for 40 years. "This is impossible," the patrol captain reported. "The base was here. It had 12,000 personnel, 200 ships, and enough firepower to level a continent. It cannot just disappear." But it had, and it was not alone. Within 6 hours, reports flooded into Valorian command from across their territory. 12 installations, spread across 6 different star systems, had vanished, not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone, as if they had never existed. Over 70,000 Valorian military personnel were missing. Then, the message came. It appeared on every communication frequency used by the Valorian people. It appeared on military channels and civilian broadcasts. It appeared on personal communicators and public displays. There was no way to block it, no way to shut it down. It simply played over and over. The message showed a human woman in a military uniform. Captain Jiwoo Hana stood in front of a camera, her expression cold and controlled. "My name is Captain Jiwoo Hana of the Earth Defense Force," she said. "6 months ago, the Galactic Council executed Ambassador Hyun Taemin. He was a diplomat. He came in peace. You murdered him to prove a point. Today, we prove ours." The image behind Hana changed. It showed one of the missing Valorian bases. The installation was intact, complete with all its personnel and equipment. But it existed in a strange space, surrounded by swirling colors that hurt to look at. The Valorians were frozen in time, held in some kind of stasis. 12 of your military installations are now in our possession," Hana continued. 73,000 of your people are alive and unharmed. They are prisoners, held in dimensional storage. They feel nothing. They will remain safe as long as you meet our demands." Councillor Vreth, watching this message from the council chambers, felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. "You will surrender the individuals responsible for Ambassador Taemin's execution," Hana said. "You will present them for trial under a neutral authority. You will formally apologize to Earth and acknowledge that his death was murder, not justice. If you comply, your people will be returned unharmed. If you refuse..." The image changed again. It showed a test firing of a weapon in empty space. A small moon simply ceased to exist, not exploded or shattered, but gone as if it had been erased from reality. "We have weapons you cannot comprehend and technology you cannot match," Hana said. "We moved through your space unseen. We took your bases without firing a shot. We could have killed your people. We chose mercy. The same mercy you denied Taemin. Remember that when you decide how to respond." The message ended, but the fear it created spread like wildfire. Across Valorian worlds, people panicked. Their military, which they had believed was invincible, had been completely bypassed. An enemy they had dismissed as primitives had demonstrated abilities that made their own defenses worthless. The council met in emergency session. 17 species argued and shouted at each other. The Nexari proposed immediate negotiation. The Kelthum demanded military retaliation. The smaller species stayed quiet, watching the larger powers panic. "How did they do this?" Councillor Vreth roared. "We are centuries ahead of them in technology. They should not be capable of faster-than-light communication, let alone moving entire bases through space." "Perhaps," the Nexari representative said quietly, "we underestimated them." While the council argued, Captain Hana's fleet revealed itself in Valorian core space. 30 human ships appeared simultaneously above Valoria Prime, the Valorian homeworld. They had been there for hours, invisible and watching. Now they allowed themselves to be seen. The Valorian defense fleet scrambled to respond. 300 warships moved to surround the human vessels, weapons locked on, shields activated. The humans made no aggressive moves. They simply waited. "This is Defense Commander Rykoth," a voice transmitted to the human ships. "You are in violation of Valorian territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Hana's response was calm. "We are here to deliver a message. You have 72 hours to meet our demands. After that, we begin demonstrating the full extent of our capabilities. We recommend you use this time wisely." "You are outnumbered 10-1, Rykoth said. "Your ships will be destroyed in minutes." "We know," Hana replied. "But ask yourself, if we are willing to appear here, in the heart of your territory, surrounded by your fleet, what does that tell you about our confidence?" The Valorian commanders hesitated. It was a good question. Why would the humans risk their ships unless they had some advantage the Valorians could not see? While this standoff continued above Valoria Prime, Colonel Shin Jae-won was conducting a different kind of operation on the other side of Valorian space. He commanded a ground team that had infiltrated a Valorian colony world, a place where the Valorians kept slaves from conquered species. Jae-won's team moved through the slave compound silently. They wore advanced armor that made them nearly invisible. They carried weapons that could stun without killing. Their mission was simple: free the slaves and get out before the Valorians knew what happened. The compound held 2,000 beings from 6 different species. Some had been slaves for generations. They had never known freedom. Many had given up hope. Jae-won found the compound's control center. 2 guards stood watch, bored and inattentive. They never saw Jae-won's team. Stun charges dropped them before they could raise an alarm. Within minutes, the compound's security systems were disabled, and the cell doors were opening. "Listen to me," Jae-won announced over the compound's communication system. "We are humans from Earth. We are here to take you home. Follow the lights we are placing. Move quickly and quietly. Your freedom starts now." The slaves hesitated at first. It seemed too good to be true. But as they saw the guards unconscious and the doors open, hope began to spread. They followed the human soldiers through corridors and out into the night air. Transport ships waited outside the compound, also hidden by ghost drive technology. The freed slaves were loaded aboard quickly and efficiently. By the time Valorian authorities realized something was happening, the ships were already leaving orbit. But Jae-won left something behind. In the compound's main plaza, he erected a monument. It was simple: a holographic display showing Taemin's final message, playing on loop. Underneath it, words written in the Valorian language: "This is what humans do. We free the oppressed. We fight injustice. We do not forget. We do not forgive." News of the liberation spread quickly. The freed slaves told their stories to anyone who would listen. They spoke of humans who moved like shadows, who fought without killing, who risked themselves to save beings they had never met. The stories reached other enslaved peoples across Council space. Hope, long dead, began to stir. On Earth, Admiral Do-yun watched reports from multiple operations. Captain Hana's fleet remained above Valoria Prime, untouched despite being surrounded. The freed slaves were arriving at safe locations, many crying with joy. Intelligence indicated that several Council species were beginning to question their alliance with the Valorians. "They wanted to teach us a lesson," Do-yun said to Dr. Sua, who stood beside him. "They wanted to show us our place. Instead, they showed us what we needed to become." "Are you certain about this path?" Sua asked. "We could destroy them. Our weapons could annihilate their worlds. But every action we take makes it harder to ever have peace." "True peace was never possible," Do-yun replied. "Not with people who execute diplomats and enslave innocents. But we can have something better than peace. We can have justice, and justice requires that someone be strong enough to enforce it." Commander Lee Min-ho's intelligence teams reported that 3 of the smaller Council species had secretly contacted Earth. They wanted to negotiate, to distance themselves from the Council's actions. They were afraid of what humanity might do next. Good, Do-yun thought. Fear was useful, not for revenge, but for change. The Council had ruled through fear for centuries, making smaller species comply through threat of violence. Now those same species saw a different kind of fear. The fear that powerful beings might actually be held accountable for their crimes. The 72 hours passed. The Council sent no apology. They refused to surrender those responsible for Taemin's death. Instead, they sent threats and demands. They insisted that humanity was the aggressor, that Earth would face consequences. Captain Hana received the Council's response and smiled without humor. She had expected this. Prideful beings rarely admitted wrong, especially when they had committed atrocities for so long that cruelty had become normal. "Send the second message," Hana ordered. This time the message went to every species in Council space, not just the Valorians. It showed evidence that Earth's intelligence teams had gathered, records of slavery, genocide, the casual destruction of less advanced species. It showed how the Council maintained power through fear and violence. It showed that Taemin's execution was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of cruelty. The final line of the message was simple. Earth stands against this. Join us or stand aside. But if you support these crimes, know that we are watching and we will return. The galaxy would never be the same. The Nexari were the first to break. They were a practical species, focused on logic and survival rather than pride. 3 days after Earth's second message, they sent a secret delegation to meet with human representatives. Commander Cho Yuna received them at a neutral location, a small space station on the edge of known space. The Nexari diplomat was named Thel, and their silver liquid form shifted nervously as they spoke. "We want peace," Thel said. "The Nexari people had no part in Ambassador Taemin's death. We voted against his execution. We can help you. We can provide intelligence on the Council's military positions. We can testify to the corruption and crimes. Just spare us." Yuna listened without expression. She was Admiral Doyen's choice for diplomatic contact because she understood how to negotiate from a position of absolute strength. She knew that mercy shown too quickly was seen as weakness. "You voted against the execution," Yuna said. "1 vote out of 17, yet for 6 months you did nothing. You sent no apology to Earth. You did not protest the Council's actions. You stayed silent because it was safe." "What could we do?" Thel asked. "We are one species among many. The Valorians and Kelthum control the military. If we had spoken out, you would have faced consequences," Yuna finished. "Yes, that is what courage costs. You chose comfort over justice. Now you come to us asking for protection because you see we have the power you refuse to challenge. You want us to save you from the same council you helped maintain." Thel's form rippled with distress. "Please, many of my people are ashamed of what happened. We want to make it right." Yuna leaned forward. "Then you will face trial along with the others. You will testify to every crime you witnessed. You will provide evidence of every atrocity the Council committed. And then maybe Earth will show you the mercy you denied Taemin. But you will not buy your way out of judgment with information. Justice does not work that way." The Nexari delegation left without agreement. But 2 days later, they returned and accepted Earth's terms. They would testify. They would provide evidence. They would face consequences for their silence. It was the first crack in the Council's unity. While diplomatic contacts proceeded, the Kelthum made their move. They were the oldest species in the Council, a civilization that had existed for 12,000 years. They had never been defeated in war. They had never bowed to a younger species. They would not start now. The Kelthum assembled the largest military fleet in their recorded history, over 5,000 warships, equipped with weapons that could shatter moons. They declared their intention to strike Earth directly to end humanity's resistance with overwhelming force. "Let the humans hide behind their tricks," High Commander Velthrus announced to his fleet. Let them use their stealth and their dimensional weapons. When we arrive at their homeworld, there will be nowhere to hide. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the natural order." The fleet departed Kelthum space with great ceremony. Their people cheered. The council watched with approval, believing that finally someone would put the humans back in their place. The fleet would reach Earth's solar system in 2 weeks. They never made it. Commander Lee Minho had known about the fleet before it launched. Earth's spy network had penetrated deep into Kelthum communications. He knew the fleet's composition, its route, its battle plans. He knew everything. What the Kelthum did not know was that for the past 4 months, Dr. Sua's teams had been placing automated weapons platforms throughout space between Kelthum territory and Earth. Thousands of platforms, each one invisible to standard detection, each one capable of delivering quantum strikes. Together, they formed a defensive grid that covered light years. The Kelthum fleet entered the grid exactly as predicted. Admiral Kang Doyun watched from Earth's command center as the massive alien armada appeared on sensors. 5,000 ships, arranged in perfect formation, advancing with absolute confidence. "Activate grid," Doyun ordered quietly. Space around the Kelthum fleet suddenly filled with energy. The weapons platforms revealed themselves for just seconds, long enough to fire and then vanish again. Quantum pulses struck every ship simultaneously. The attacks were not designed to destroy, but to disable. Shield systems failed. Engines went offline. Weapons became inert. Life support remained intact. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Kelthum fleet was dead in space. 5,000 ships, over 2 million crew members, completely helpless. Then human ships appeared. Not 30 this time, but 300. The full might of Earth's strike fleet, no longer hiding. They surrounded the disabled Kelthum vessels and transmitted a message. Fleet Admiral Baek Seungho spoke directly to High Commander Velthris. "We could have destroyed you. Every ship, every life. Our weapons were capable of it. We chose mercy instead. Your crews will be rescued and returned home. Your ships will be towed to a neutral location and eventually given back. We want you to remember this. Humans had the power to kill you all, and we chose not to. Your council sent an ambassador to die. We send your people home alive. Remember the difference." Medical ships moved through the disabled fleet, checking each vessel to ensure life support was stable and crews were safe. The Kelthum warriors, trapped in their powerless ships, watched in confusion and growing shame. They had come to conquer, and instead, they had been defeated without a single death. High Commander Velthris, sitting in his darkened command center, understood what had happened. The humans had not just beaten the Kelthum. They had humiliated them. They had shown that the oldest, most powerful species in the Council was as helpless as a child before human technology. And they had done it without killing anyone, making revenge morally impossible. News of the fleet's fate spread across the galaxy. The images were everywhere, thousands of mighty Kelthum warships drifting helplessly, while human medical teams worked to save their crews. It shattered the myth of Council invincibility. It showed that Earth was not lucky or clever, but genuinely superior in ways the Council could not match. While the Council reeled from this defeat, Lieutenant Han Yunji completed her investigation. She had been digging into classified Council records for months, using access that Earth's hackers had gained. What she found was damning. Yunji presented her findings to Admiral Doyen in a private meeting. "Taemin's execution was planned," she said, pulling up documents on a display. 6 months before we even sent him to the Council. They decided that humanity was advancing too quickly. They saw us as a threat to their dominance. The espionage charge was fabricated specifically to justify killing him. "Why?" Doyen asked, though he suspected he knew. "Because the Council's species are stagnant," Yunji explained. "The Valorians have not made a major technological advance in 300 years. The Kelthum have been using the same weapon systems for a millennium. The Nexari society is so rigid that innovation is discouraged. They saw human progress and realized they were being left behind. They were afraid of becoming irrelevant, Doyen said. Exactly. So they decided to crush us before we became too strong. They believed that killing one diplomat would frighten us into submission. They never considered that it might do the opposite. Yunji's report was broadcast across every communication channel Earth could access. The evidence was clear and undeniable. The Council had not executed Taman for espionage. They had murdered him because they feared human potential. It was not justice. It was assassination disguised as law. The revelation changed everything. Species that had supported the Council began to question their alliance. Citizens on Council worlds protested in the streets, demanding answers. How many other species had been suppressed or destroyed because the Council feared competition? The smaller species in the Council saw opportunity. For centuries, they had been forced to follow the lead of the Valorians, Nexari, and Kelthum. Now, those powerful species were revealed as corrupt and weak. Several minor Council members approached Earth with offers of alliance, but the greatest shift came from within Council worlds themselves. Young Valorians, ashamed of their leaders' crimes, began speaking out. Kelthum citizens questioned why their greatest fleet had been sent to attack humans who had done nothing wrong. Nexari intellectuals debated whether silence in the face of evil was the same as participation. The Council called emergency sessions daily, but they could not agree on anything. The Valorians wanted to continue the war. The Kelthum wanted to negotiate from what little strength they had left. The Nexari wanted to surrender completely. The minor species just wanted to survive whatever came next. Councillor Vreth, who had called for Taman's execution, found himself under investigation by his own people. Evidence showed he had accepted bribes to support the assassination plan. His career was finished. Some called for his execution, creating bitter irony. In Earth's command center, Admiral Doyen watched the Council tear itself apart. He felt no satisfaction, only a tired certainty that this had been necessary. The Council had built its power on fear and lies. Now, exposed and defeated, it was collapsing from within. They will ask for peace terms soon, Commander Yuna said, standing beside him. Yes, Doyen agreed, and then we will face the hardest choice. Do we accept them back into the community of civilizations, or do we remain forever separate, watching from the shadows? What does justice require? Yuna asked. Doyen considered the question. Justice for Taman meant more than punishment. It meant ensuring this could never happen again. It meant creating a galaxy where diplomats were safe, where progress was celebrated rather than feared, where power could not simply crush those it saw as threats. Justice requires that we finish what we started, Doyen said finally. The Council is broken. Now we decide what comes after. The war was not over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth had won. The only question remaining was what humanity would do with victory. The message from the Galactic Council arrived on Earth exactly 1 year after Taman's execution. It was delivered by a small, unarmed vessel that transmitted constantly to show it carried no weapons, no threats, only words. The Council offered complete surrender. They would disband. They would face trials for their crimes. They would accept any terms Earth demanded. They asked only that humanity show the mercy the Council had refused to give. Admiral Kang Do-yun read the message alone in his office. He had imagined this moment many times during the long months of preparation and war. He had thought he would feel satisfaction, vindication, perhaps even joy. Instead, he felt only the weight of what came next. He called a meeting of Earth's leadership. Military commanders, scientists, diplomats, and representatives from every nation gathered in the command center. They had worked together for a year, united by common purpose. Now they needed to decide what kind of galaxy they wanted to create. "We have won," Doyon said simply. "The Council surrenders. The question is, what do we do with our victory?" The room filled with voices, everyone wanting to speak at once. Some argued for occupation, placing human governors on council worlds to ensure compliance. Others suggested demanding tribute, making the council species pay for their crimes. A few even suggested simply destroying the council's military capability completely and leaving them defenseless. Dr. Yoon Sua raised her hand for silence. The room quieted out of respect for the woman whose inventions had made victory possible. "We became strong to get justice for Taemin," Sua said. "But if we occupy worlds and demand tribute, if we rule through fear, then we become the same as the Council. Power without principle is just tyranny with a different name." "Then what do you suggest?" someone asked. "We just forgive them? Pretend Taemin's death did not matter?" "No," Sua said firmly. "We never forgive. We never forget. But we also do not become monsters to fight monsters. We find a different way." Captain Jiwoo Hana spoke next. She had been there when Taemin died. She had carried that image in her mind every day since. Taemin's last words were, "Show them what humans truly are. Not what we can destroy, not what we can conquer, what we truly are. We need to remember that." The debate continued for hours. Finally, a consensus emerged. Earth would not rule the galaxy, but Earth would never allow what happened to Taemin to happen again. They would create something new, something the galaxy had never seen. 3 days later, Admiral Doyun stood before a camera. The broadcast would reach every inhabited world in known space. Behind him was a memorial to Hyun Taemin, a simple stone with his name and his final words carved into it. "I am Admiral Kang Doyun of Earth," he began. "1 year ago, the Galactic Council executed Ambassador Hyun Taemin. He was a diplomat who came in peace. Your leaders murdered him because they feared humanity's potential. Today, we respond." Images appeared behind Doyon showing disabled Keltham ships, captured Valorian bases, and freed slaves. Evidence of every operation Earth had conducted, every victory achieved. "We could destroy you," Doyon continued. "Our weapons are beyond your understanding. Your fleets cannot stop us. Your defenses cannot detect us. We could annihilate every council world in days. But we will not. Do you know why?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "Because Taemin would not have wanted that. He believed in dialogue, in understanding, in the possibility of peace. His faith cost him his life, but his faith also showed us who we should strive to be. So we make this declaration: Earth will never join your council. We will never submit to your authority. We refuse to be part of a system that values power over justice." Behind Doyun, new images appeared. These showed human ships in orbit around various worlds, watching silently. "But we will also not rule you. Instead, we declare ourselves the galaxy's watchers. We will remain separate, but we will be present. If any species commits genocide, if any government enslaves innocents, if any power executes diplomats to protect its dominance, we will know, and we will act. This is not a threat. This is a promise. We are humanity. We do not bow. We do not break. We do not forget. Your council is dissolved as of this moment. You will create new governments based on justice and equality. Not because you suddenly became moral, but because we are watching. We are the consequence you will always face. We are the eternal battle against every injustice among the stars. The prisoners we took will be returned. Every Valorian soldier, every captured crew member, everyone we displaced will go home. We will also return your bases and installations, all of them, unharmed. This is our gift: life when you gave death, mercy when you showed cruelty. Remember this mercy. Remember that humanity had power over you and chose to return what we took rather than keep it. But know this as well. We will never leave. Human ships will patrol this galaxy forever. You will never see most of them. But they will be there, watching, waiting, judging. If you build just societies, you have nothing to fear from us. If you return to old habits of oppression and murder, then we will return. And next time, we will not be so merciful. Taman believed in the possibility of a better galaxy. We will make that galaxy real, not through conquest, but through vigilance, not through rule, but through consequences. You killed one man. We became a permanent reminder of what that cost. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and tried to process what had just happened. The mighty council, which had ruled for millennia, was gone. In its place was something stranger and more frightening, a species that had overwhelming power, but refused to use it for domination. In the days that followed, Captain Jiwoo Hana received new orders. She would command the Taman Protocol, a permanent mission to patrol the galaxy. Human ships would respond to distress calls, stop genocides, free slaves, and intervene wherever injustice occurred. It was not conquest, it was guardianship. Hana assembled her fleet, 50 ships equipped with the best technology humanity could provide. Each ship carried both weapons and medical supplies, soldiers and diplomats, power and compassion. They would be humanity's representatives in the galaxy, showing what Earth truly stood for. Their first mission was to return the captured Valorian soldiers. The process took weeks. Each group of prisoners was brought back to Valorian space and released. Many of them were confused, having expected torture or death. Instead, they had been held safely and now returned home without harm. High Commander Velthris of the Kelthum was among those returned. His massive fleet, once disabled, had been repaired by human engineers and towed back to Kelthum's space. When Velthris stepped back onto his homeworld, he carried a message from Fleet Admiral Baek Seung-ho. "Tell your people what you learned," the message said. "Tell them that power without wisdom leads to defeat. Tell them that a species 5,000 years younger beat you not because we were stronger, but because we were willing to change, to grow, to become something you refused to become. And tell them that if they choose to grow as well, humanity will help rather than hinder. But if they choose pride over progress again, we will be there." Velthris delivered the message. The shame of defeat was heavy, but the lesson was heavier. The Kelthum had believed their age gave them superiority. They had learned otherwise. On Earth, the memorial to Taman became a sacred place. Every person who graduated from the Diplomatic Academy touched his monument before leaving for their assignments. Every military officer who led human ships into space read his final words aloud. Taman had not lived to see humanity's triumph, but his death had created something more valuable than victory. It had created purpose. Dr. Yoon Sua continued her research, but now she also shared knowledge. Species that proved themselves committed to peace and justice received access to some human technology, not weapons, but tools for advancement. Medicine, energy systems, agricultural techniques. Humanity would help others rise, just as they had asked the Council for help once. The new governments that formed on former Council worlds were closely watched. Some tried to maintain old power structures. Human ships appeared in orbit, not threatening but present. The message was clear: change or face consequences. Most chose change. Years passed. The galaxy adapted to its new reality. Human ships became a common sight, no longer feared but respected. When pirates raided a colony, human vessels responded. When natural disasters struck, human aid arrived. When governments grew corrupt, human observers documented crimes and demanded accountability. Commander Lee Minho, now an admiral himself, established a network of listening posts throughout the galaxy. These small hidden stations monitored communications and watched for signs of injustice. Humanity's eyes were everywhere, and nothing stayed hidden long. Colonel Shin Jae-won continued liberation missions, freeing enslaved peoples wherever they were found. Each freed group was given resources to establish new homes, either on their original worlds or on unclaimed planets. Humanity would not rule them, but would help them become independent and strong. Lieutenant Han Eunji, promoted to captain, led intelligence operations that exposed corruption before it could take root. Her teams worked silently, gathering evidence and revealing truth. Governments that might have become tyrannies were stopped before they fully formed. Commander Cho Yuna became Earth's chief diplomat, not to the galaxy's leaders, but to its peoples. She traveled to worlds establishing new governments, helping them build systems based on representation and justice rather than power. She taught the principles Taemin had believed in, ensuring his legacy lived beyond his death. On the 5th anniversary of Taemin's execution, Admiral Doyon retired. He had spent 5 years transforming humanity from victims to guardians. Now it was time for younger leaders to carry the burden. He visited Taemin's memorial one last time before leaving the command center. "We did it," Doyon said to the stone marker. "We showed them what humans truly are, not conquerors, not victims, guardians, watchmen, the conscience the galaxy needed. You would be proud." Captain Hana, now Admiral herself, took command of Earth's forces. She understood the mission perfectly. Humanity would never stop watching, never stop responding, never stop being the consequence that evil feared. The galaxy was not perfect. Injustice still occurred, but now it had a cost. Now someone was always watching. Now consequences were real and immediate. The Council's old way of ruling through fear and oppression was gone, replaced by something stranger and more effective: accountability. Humanity had become myth and reality together. Some species told stories of ghost ships that appeared when evil was done. Others spoke of silent guardians who watched from the darkness. All knew that the species that lost one diplomat had become the eternal conscience of the stars. And in academies across Earth, new graduates prepared to join the mission. They studied Taemin's life and honored his death. They learned that power without principle was tyranny, but principle without power was helpless. They prepared to carry humanity's message forward: we do not bow, we do not break, and we never, ever forget. The eternal battle against injustice continued, and humanity, once small and powerless, now watched over the galaxy, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as something more important, the consequence that evil could never escape.